Hey everybody, my name's Vinny and welcome to the Pain Academy YouTube channel where I'm going to show you the same information that I've used to impact the way thousands of people are moving and feeling. As always, this is going to be a basic, simple routine that is designed to improve muscular function and joint movement. If you're looking for something more specific, maybe a little bit more custom tailored to maybe what your body needs, then definitely check out the links in our bio. Go to our website, check out our online programs where we can help you design and develop more of a custom routine that's right for you. But back to the routine today. The main intention of this routine is to get the right side and left side of your body to start moving and communicating better together. And then we are going to, once better balance and stability has been achieved, we're then going to reposition your hip, pelvis, and spine. The majority of people that are going to do this are going to feel better afterwards. They're going to feel more connected to their body. They're going to have better sensory information. They're going to feel more grounded, more secure and stable. Range of motion might improve. Just overall generally feeling like movement is easier. Some people who have a severe enough joint dysfunction might feel like this is a little uncomfortable because you're asking muscles and joints to move that haven't actually had to move in quite some time without other compensatory mechanisms showing up. So I say all this because I want you to properly assess and evaluate if this routine is helpful for you. To do that, before you do this routine, I want you to stand up, walk around, maybe bend forward, maybe do a partial squat. Don't force anything. I want you to first get a baseline pulse on what it feels like to move with your current state of function. Then do this routine. And then when you're done with this routine, go back to the same movements you did at the start. Walk around, bend forward, do another partial squat. I want you to be able to assess and observe, am I moving and feeling better? Did I improve the connection I have with my body? Do things feel more secure? If it's positive, great. You just found a really simple way to start working on improving the way that you're moving and feeling from home. If you don't feel better and you started to ask muscles and joints to move that haven't worked for some time, then don't force this. I don't want you to push through any discomfort here. The goal is to feel better. If this routine wasn't it, then definitely check out the website where I can have a little bit more of a structured program to help you ease into restoring joint dysfunctions, movement impairments, or muscle dysfunction. So that being said, before we get started, I want you to get your equipment prepared. All you're gonna need is a chair. A yoga block would be ideal, but if you don't have a yoga block, you can just use a regular foam roller. And then we're gonna need a strap. I've got a fabric belt strap here. If you don't have a fabric belt strap, you can literally just use a fashion belt. Use something that you would tie around your waist, or you can use a dog leash. And then the last thing I want you to get ready is 2 towels for the hip flexor stretch. That will all make sense once you get into this and start doing this routine, but I want you to be prepared beforehand. So you need a chair, a strap, a yoga block, or a foam roller, and then 2 towels. You get those things, and let's get started. Straighten your left leg on the ground and lift your right leg off of the ground. You're going to interlace your hands together right behind the hamstring underneath the knee. From here, we're going to do clockwise rotations for 1 minute with your right ankle. As we rotate this foot, let's make sure the shin stays parallel to the ground and we're taking our time. You might notice that you're skipping certain angles and ranges of motion. So I want you to go slow. Whatever your natural speed is, go half as fast as that. And then go half as fast as whatever that half speed was. The goal is to rediscover function with dozens of muscles in your toes, arch, and front of your shin. So take your time for the minute of clockwise rotation that we're gonna do. As the right foot's rotating, let's also make sure that that left leg is still pointed straight up towards the ceiling. That way we don't have any rotation starting to come in with this exercise. Most of the time people will use speed to avoid function. So again, really pay attention to how fast that ankle's moving. That was about a minute, so let's switch directions now. Let's go counterclockwise with the same ankle. It's also really important to understand if you have any TMJ or teeth grinding issues, what your jaw and tongue position is doing in this exercise. When the ankle, knee, and hip are not stable, we will actually clench down the jaw in an effort to stabilize our pelvis. So make sure to keep breathing, relax your face, relax your jaw, and just rediscover motion, one repetition and one circle at a time. Ideally, these should be simple, right? We're just asking muscles to move the bones in the foot. If these are hard for you, we have to ask the question of, well, what is really helping us walk? What's helping us run if these muscles aren't even able to move the foot well without being under load? The whole idea with this is we want this to get easier over time. Now, let's do point and flexes with the same ankle. So point the foot forward, then pull it back. Point it forwards, and pull it back. This is that action that we want to have happen when we walk. It's that rolling toe-off action with each step. And you'll find that the easier this exercise gets, the smoother and more natural walking and running is going to feel for you. And that's good for the right leg. Let's switch sides. Now straighten your right leg out on the ground and lift your left leg up. Interlace your hands together behind your left hamstring. And we're going to start off with counterclockwise circles on this side for a minute. And even though it's early on this left side, you should probably already have a sense of how this foot is working different than the other foot. Ideally, we want them to be the same, but if there is years of imbalance, compensation, dysfunction, and asymmetry, chances are you're going to notice one side already has a different level of range of motion, one side has a different level of cadence and speed to it, and one side definitely has a different level of endurance. So pay attention to which one feels like it's fatiguing. Over time, you should start to notice both feet can be used the same way. So be sure to keep the straight leg still pointed up towards the ceiling. Good, about 10 more seconds of this rotation. The shoulders are relaxed and the jaw is relaxed. Now, let's go the opposite way. So let's go clockwise. And again, whatever speed you're choosing, go half as fast as that, and then half as fast as that. I don't care if you get 10 circles in throughout the entire duration. I just want that foot to start moving again. And also don't be afraid to get those toes involved too. So when you get that rolling action, get those toes by pointing and flexing and curling with you. The whole idea here is to rediscover function throughout the entire foot. Hence the name of the exercise. Good, nice and slow, we're breathing. And also make sure that the leg is straight. Notice how the shin is parallel and it's not moving around at all. You might try to move your ankle left, right, higher or lower to make it easier to work. We want to keep everything on really nice angles today. Perfect. Now let's go ahead and point and flex. Pull the toes back and point them forward. And again, don't be afraid to get those toes involved. Let's see those toes point and curl with you and then pull back. Wonderful. One rep at a time. And just to be really redundant here, we're working on the strength and the function of the arches, the shins, and the calf muscles. These are the muscles that are responsible for stabilizing our upper body. So it's really important that we work on our foundation, the base of our support, to help us get us through the rest of the day. And that's good. Moving to your hands and knees, let's start off in a tabletop position. Right now, the shoulders are directly above the wrists and the hips are directly above the knees. From here, we're going to move our pelvis first. So why don't we start rolling our pelvis backwards? Good, just like that. And the upper body is going to follow that motion. Now, keeping your upper body still, let's begin to move the pelvis first. So gently start tipping that pelvis forward. And one at a time, I want you to feel your vertebrae, your backbones slowly move to the floor as your shoulders come back and you look forward. And this is the important part. Keep your upper body still and now begin to move your pelvis again. And slowly allow that change to go all the way up through the mid-back, the shoulders, and the head. I want you to think of this as a wave of motion, and your pelvis is moving everything. We're going to be doing this for about a minute to a minute and a half. We're not looking to go fast. We're looking to have the pelvis control the position of the spine instead of letting the upper body move the pelvis like you might be used to. And every time you slowly go into this pelvic mobilizing movement, I want you to see if you can really connect to both sides of your body doing this together simultaneously. Some of you might find you can only feel muscles on one side of the body doing all this motion, and that's okay. That'll change over time. And one last important cue on this is to make sure you stay in that tabletop position. At no point do we want to lean forward or lean backwards just for the sake of getting a better range of motion. I don't care how much arch you can get. I don't care how much bending and rounding you can get. The goal is not max end range of motion. The goal is that your pelvis can start to move your spine again, instead of the spine always having to move the pelvis because the hip flexors and the glutes have basically shut down. Keep breathing and keep moving. You can do as many of these as you want, but that's time for this. Let's go ahead and move on. Starting off standing with both feet pointing forwards and straight ahead. And when I say pointing forwards, I mean the outer edge of the foot is forwards and the big toe is just slightly pigeon-toed a couple degrees. From here, take your hands, curl your fingertips into your knuckles, arms down by your side, and let's see if we can get those shoulder blades to come back a little bit better together. And from here, keeping the shoulder blades pulled back, raise both arms out to the side. And we're gonna start nice, slow, arm circles pointing forwards. Now, the whole goal here is to keep the shoulder blades pinned back together, not excessively to where we're panicking and struggling with it, but I wanna encourage the shoulder blades to stay back together so that way we aren't throwing the whole shoulder around as we move. We're keeping the rotation in the head of the shoulder joint, which is the whole intention of this exercise. One of the most common shoulder injuries are rotator cuff tears and shoulder impingement, and that's what happens when the shoulder is unable to rotate. So if you notice that this is hard, it's a strong indication that we probably need a lot more exercises like this so we can build up the fortitude of what the shoulders are able to do. Keep your abs relaxed. You might also feel the work in your neck. That's okay. If the shoulders aren't able to rotate well, you're going to offshore that work to other parts of your body. Take a couple deep breaths in through the nose, out through the mouth. Now, let's flip palms face straight up. Again, keep those shoulders pulled back, and we're going to do another minute in the reverse direction. Notice how I'm not whipping my upper body around. I'm not trying to move my upper body. I'm trying to move my shoulders, my arms around a still, stable upper body position. So if you're noticing momentum, just pull the shoulder blades back, go nice and slow. And you should be doing this with me right now. So notice how this is a kind of a calm conversation, and I'm not holding my breath. I'm not wincing my face, trying to stay as calm and relaxed as possible as these shoulders rediscover what it means to be able to rotate within the socket. It's important that the abs stay relaxed. And that's time. Let's place a strap around your ankles. Feet back down on the mat, and then we're going to place our block between our knees. And let's make sure that the feet are pointed straight. So just gently kind of pigeon toe the feet a little bit. Wonderful. Upper body's relaxed. And from here, at the same time, we're going to squeeze our knees together and slide our ankles outward into the strap. And then relax. And then squeeze and press again. And then relax. This is all about timing. The whole intention of this exercise is to get the stabilizers in your ankles, knees, and hips and pelvis to start working together simultaneously at the same time. So try to avoid squeezing the knees and then sliding the ankles out. We want that squeeze press motion to happen simultaneously from the hips. So take your time with this. Remember to relax in between each rep. I don't want you to furiously get through all of these next couple minutes together. I want you to find function, squeeze and press, and then relax. Squeeze and press, and relax. Basically at that rhythm and cadence. If this block was not between your knees and you did this motion or function, your knees would immediately move inward. So that block prevents your knees from moving inward, yet we're still trying to find the muscles that help you move inward. This is another way of saying that we are working on internal rotation of the hip without actually cranking on the internal rotators of the hip. We're just asking those muscles to basically be able to work together without us trying to twist or rotate anything, which is a really great way to start introducing how the hips should be able to function and which muscles help you move. Now, when you press outward against the strap, make sure it's not, we're just kind of rolling the ankle outward. We want to make sure that, I want you to think about almost like you were in an ice rink and you're sliding the foot out to the side. So that whole foot stays flat and you're just kind of sliding it outward. That's really going to start to get these internal rotators of the hip to start working better together. And over these last 40 seconds, I want you to pay attention to if this feels balanced for you, if you feel the work in the same places on both sides of your hips, knees, and ankles, or if one side feels different. Maybe one side's getting more fatigued or exhausted, or maybe one side's a little jittery and shaky. This is just imbalance and asymmetry, and they'll go away the more you practice this. Okay, we're coming up on 3 minutes. Great job with this exercise. Let's put a strap around your thighs, just above the knee. And then we're going to take our block or foam roller, if that's what you're using at home, and we're going to place that block between our ankles. Okay, both feet flat down on the ground. So we've got the strap around the thighs, the block between the ankles. Let's widen our hands a little bit just until you feel the shoulder blades lay a little flatter on the floor. And from here, over the next 3 minutes, we are going to press the knees out into the strap and squeeze the block with our ankles simultaneously. And then relax. Press out and squeeze in, and then relax. And you're going to do this really slow and together over the next couple minutes. A lot of you might find that you want to press the strap first and then squeeze the ankles. We're trying to get the ankles, knees, and hip to understand how to communicate and function together again. So that's why I want the press and squeeze motion to happen together instead of one joint trying to work and then another joint trying to work. This exercise is about reestablishing the harmony and the timing mechanism of how the ankles, knees, and hips work together. So take a couple deep breaths. Remind your body that you should be able to breathe while your lower body works. The upper body's relaxed, and we're just squeezing and pressing over the next 2 minutes together. If this strap was not around your knees would go outward, meaning they would externally rotate at the hip. So this strap holding your legs is keeping everything in an aligned, fixed position while you still try to target the rotators of the hip. And the rotators of the hip are the glutes and the hip flexors. So this exercise is an attempt to reestablish balance and communication between the hip flexors and the glutes simultaneously, which is exactly what needs to happen when you're running or walking. If you notice a wobble, either when you press out or when you relax, that is one leg working different than another. Go slow enough so both legs can work together. And we are coming up on 3 minutes. Great job. If this feels good, you can of course go another minute or two, but 3 minutes is enough to start reestablishing function and stability. There are a couple modifications that we can do with the world's greatest hip flexor stretch. If you notice that you have an excessive lumbar curve, or otherwise called as lordosis, what you want to do is not use any towels or equipment for this. If you notice that you have a flat back or a posterior pelvic tilt, you are going to want to use towels for this. So I'll cue you with what those towels look like a little later on, but first let's get into this position. So we're going to start off with one leg over a chair, and one leg is going to be straight out on the ground. The leg that is straight on the ground for the best results is going to be flat up against the wall. And when this leg is straight up against the wall, I want you to slightly rotate the foot in so the outer edge of the foot is pointed straight up towards the ceiling, because I don't want any rotation in the leg that is straight out on the ground. Now, she has a little bit of an excessive curve in the lower back, which is why we are not using any modifications or any towels for this. But if you notice that you have a flat lower back position and we want to reestablish the curve in your lower back, what you're going to want to do is take a bath towel, 2 of them to be specific, and you're going to roll up these bath towels just enough to create a little bit of what you could wrap your hand around. And one of these towels is going to go right underneath your belly button where your lower back is, and the other towel is going to go right underneath your neck. Think of these as almost like a lumbar support. So as the hip flexor length is reestablished, you are also supporting the lower back and the cervical neck. Honestly, regardless if you have a really arched lower back or a flat lower back, I recommend you try this position in both variations, maybe a couple times without towels like this, and then also maybe a couple times with the towel underneath your belly button and underneath your upper neck, so you can get a sense of what just helps you feel better. There's no right or wrong way to do that. I'm going to start my timer now, and to be in this position fully, we're going to have the leg that is propped up over a chair is at a 90-degree bend, and the hip is also at a 90-degree bend too. So this entire left leg is being held up by the chair, the pelvis is relatively neutral, and the straight leg is straight out with the foot pointing straight up towards the wall. Now, we're going to be here anywhere from 15 to maybe 30 minutes per side, depending on how long it takes your hip flexor to release. Well, here's how you can know if your hip flexor has released or not. If you were to tighten the quad, so the thigh muscle on the straight leg, when you squeeze that thigh muscle tight, you should notice that the contraction is right in the middle of the quad. When it is, this tells me that the hip is in a beautiful position, there's no rotation at the hip joint, and the hip flexor has returned to its proper resting length. If you squeeze your quad and you notice the contraction in your knee, in the kneecap, or if you notice the contraction in your back or your pelvis moves or your shoulder tightens, that tells us that the hip has not released yet. So what I want you to do is squeeze that thigh muscle tight right now and just see and get a sense of wherever in your body you feel that contraction on the straight leg. We're going to go ahead and set a timer for 5 minutes, and in 5 minutes from now, we're going to squeeze that quad muscle again and see if that position of the contraction has changed for you. We're hoping that it will, but if the hip flexor is really tight, it might feel the same for your first 5-minute check-in. All right, that was 5 minutes resting in this position. Now we're gonna do our second quad test. The first one was at the start of this exercise. So go ahead and contract your right thigh muscle tight and observe where that contraction is. If you felt it change at all, wonderful. This means that the hip flexor is starting to respond. We're starting to take rotation out of the hip and the muscles are returning to their proper resting position. If you find that the contraction was in the same spot, maybe it was the kneecap or the lower back, it's okay. It means we haven't gotten the hip flexor to respond yet. So we're gonna stay here for more time. I'll see you again in 5 minutes where we're gonna do our third quad test check. Okay, now it's time for your third quad test. So go ahead and, as always, contract the quad of the right thigh and observe where that contraction is. Now, this is the third test, which means you're 10 minutes in. I recommend we at least go, regardless if that contraction felt, where you felt it changed or not, I recommend us going another 5 minutes. So from this point on, we're going to do 5 more minutes on the clock, and I'll see you for the fourth and hopefully final quad test. Check. Okay, it's time for our fourth quad test check. So go ahead and give your right leg quad another contraction and determine where that contraction is. Usually it'll take about 15 minutes if you have a tight hip flexor for the contraction to start moving into the middle of the quad. If you find that it's moved into the middle of the quad, great, you're done on this side. We're gonna give the other side the same amount of time. If you notice that it's still towards the knee or it's still up in the lower back, that tells us that we got some work to do. You can, of course, continue to hold this position for anywhere from 15 more minutes up, doing that quad test every 5 minutes to see how long it takes for the hip flexor to release. Or you can just call it a day and just do this again tomorrow and again tomorrow. And eventually that hip flexor will learn how to release on time. So that being said, let's go ahead and transition and move into the other side. Now, when we started off with the other side, the intent was to release the right hip flexor. So tomorrow, you're going to start with the right leg up on the chair, and we're going to try to release your left hip flexor first, because we don't want to always release the right first and then release the left second. We want to alternate every other day with which one we're asking to release first. That way we can really aim to achieve as balanced of approach as possible. So you're at the start on the left leg. We're going to do the quad test again. Go ahead and squeeze the front left thigh muscle. Observe where that contraction is. And just make a mental note. It's either in the exact same place and you felt it in the same way as the other side, or it's an entirely different experience. Regardless of whatever your experience is, make a mental note of that, and we're going to observe how that changes over time the more consistent you ask both hip flexors to finally be restored to their proper resting position. I'm going to put 5 minutes on the clock, and I'll see you in 5 minutes for our next quad test. Okay, it's been 5 minutes. We're gonna do your second quad test. So go ahead and contract the muscles in the front left thigh and observe if that contraction changed, and if it did, how did that change? Remember, we're looking for that contraction to be right in the middle of the quad. So hopefully we started to get some change. If not, that's okay. We got 10 more minutes here. So I'm gonna put another 5 minutes on the clock, and I'll see you in 5. It's time for our third quad check. So tighten the muscles in the front left thigh and determine if that left hip is starting to restore its proper length again. We're looking for that contraction to be right in the middle of the quad. You might notice that one side actually releases faster than the other. You might notice that one side is a lot more stubborn, and you might have to do 15, 20, 30 minutes on one side. If that's the case, you want to try to spend equal time on both sides. If one hip takes 30 minutes to release and the other hip only takes 5 minutes to release, we still want both sides to be 30 minutes. Otherwise, an imbalanced approach will give us an imbalanced outcome. So you really want to kind of time this to whichever leg takes the longest, and you'll only know that by doing it and doing it and doing it until you have a more intimate understanding with what your hips, pelvis, and spine are able to do. So I'm going to put 5 more minutes on the clock, and I'll see you for a fourth and final quad test. All right, we're 15 minutes in. This is your final quad test, unless you need more time here. So go ahead and contract your left thigh. Ideally, we want that contraction to be the middle of the thigh, but you're just gonna take a look to see where that is for you. And you either need more time here or you feel it in the mid-thigh, and we can move on to the next exercise. In a standing position, let's make sure both feet are pointing straight forwards. So for that, you've got 5 toes on each foot. That middle toe should point forward, meaning you're gonna have just a slight pigeon toe here. Now, before we do the squat position, I want you to just kind of feel the weighting of where your weight distribution is in your feet. You want your weight evenly split between the front of the foot and the heels. And we're gonna maintain that loading throughout the entire time. So once you feel like you're properly grounded in the front foot and back foot, bring your hands to shoulder height and simultaneously bend your hips and your knees together at the same time. Good, and it's not about depth. This is as low as you need to go, as long as the arms are in line with the shoulders. So lower the hands a little bit, good. It's imperative that as we stay here for the next minute, that you don't start shifting your weight back towards the heels or starting to lean forward towards the toes. So maybe when you're in the squat position, maybe play around with that loading just a little bit to ensure that your weight is evenly distributed throughout your entire musculoskeletal system. If you want a little bit of a challenge, you can flip the palms face up. This is going to place the shoulders under an external demand, which is going to require that the hips work a little bit harder here. 30 seconds left. Even though we're in a static hold, I want you to breathe. So take a moment. Even though a lot of things are tense, I want you to find the calmest, softest way to stay in this position as your body figures out how to stabilize through the major muscle groups. 10 seconds. When done right, we should kind of feel a combination of a lot of different things doing work, not one specific part of our body. But it's okay if that's what you feel if you're just starting out or early on into this program. Go ahead and stand up. Great job. Okay, so now that you're done with this, move around. Again, assess what does it feel like now. Pay attention to what differences there are. Notice if range of motion has changed, if overall comfort or the general ease or tension of your muscles have changed at all. And write down in the comments below what your experience was, and then let's talk about it. Let's use your experience to help you understand your body, and then also understand what you can start doing to make a significant difference in the quality of your life and how you are moving and feeling long term. Hope you enjoyed.